Hi everyone, welcome to Creative Movies Recapped for another recap, The Boy. Be aware of spoilers ahead. The movie opens up with Greta from the United States who travels to the United Kingdom for a job. Greta takes up the job hoping to start over and escape from her abusive ex-boyfriend Cole, with whom she has a restraining order against. She is hired by an old couple, the Hilshers, to take care of their son Brahms. Greta arrives at the Hilshers' mansion, leaving her shoes at the door. She then hears a noise from upstairs and goes up looking around until she meets Malcolm, the grocery guy, who then offers to give her a tour of the house. By the way, Malcolm delivers groceries to the Hilshers once a week. Greta asks Malcolm what the family is like, and Malcolm responds the Hilshers are good people, but stutters when asked about the son. Mrs. Hilsher walks in and asks about Greta's shoes, which she goes to get but doesn't find them where she last placed them. Mrs. Hilsher assures her they will turn up as Brahms took them, and further proceeds to introduce her to Brahms. Greta is finally introduced to Brahms, who turns out to be a doll and thinks it's a joke that she has to care for the doll, though the Hilshers seem really serious about it. Mrs. Hilsher speaks about other nannies who have worked there before, but Brahms rejected them. Later on, Mrs. Hilsher explains the boy's schedule, including waking him up, reading him a book in a loud voice, as well as playing him loud music. Mr. Hilsher further guides Greta in cleaning the traps to keep rats away from the Walls house, as Brahms does not like animals. He then tries to convince her that Brahms is alive no matter how the situation looks on the outside. Later that night, the Hilshers take Brahms to bed and ask to have a moment alone with him, leaving Greta locked outside. Minutes later, the Hilshers unlock the door and inform Greta that Brahms has chosen her and wants her around. The next morning, the Hilshers have to suddenly go for a vacation, leaving Greta with a set of rules and insist she has to follow each of them. The rules on the list include no guests allowed, never leave Brahms alone, never cover his face, among others. Before leaving, they bid farewell to Greta and the doll in an unusual sorrowful mood, while Mrs. Hilsher even goes ahead and offers Greta an apology. Now with Greta alone in the house with Brahms, she keeps him aside and covers him up and goes about her own business and breaks the rules. Later that night, Greta is freaked out when strange events happen, from Brahms' face uncovered to strange dreams and weird calls. The next day, Malcolm drops by the house and brings along Greta's first week pay. She then goes ahead and asks Malcolm about the whole situation with the doll, and discovers that 20 years ago, Brahms died in a fire on his birthday, and the doll showed up the same day, and since then, the doll has been away to cope with their son's death. That night, more mysterious events occur as Greta's clothes starts to go missing. Convinced someone is in the attic, she takes a look and later locked inside. Malcolm arrives at the house to pick up Greta for a tour around as agreed earlier on, and with no answer he drives away, leaving Greta calling for help. Greta then falls unconscious and regains consciousness later in the morning and calls Malcolm over, convinced someone broke into the house. Greta asks about the real Brahms, and Malcolm responds he was rather odd and strange. Later that night, she wakes up and finds her missing shoes outside the door, with the rules beside the doll. She then receives a call with a child's voice asking why she fails to follow the rules. A meal is later brought for Greta, and she is now convinced that the doll is really Brahms and he is alive and harmless. Meanwhile, the Hilshers write a letter to their son and have it delivered to their house, and later drown themselves. And by the way, Greta once suffered a miscarriage due to her abusive ex-boyfriend, therefore found comfort in Brahms as his own and started growing fond of him. Greta then tries to prove to Malcolm that the doll is really alive, and Malcolm is also convinced. When strange events begin to occur, Malcolm is fully convinced that Brahms is actually an evil spirit. He then tells Greta about a little girl, Emily, who came to the mansion to play with Brahms, and one day she came but never made it out. Emily's body was later found with her skull crushed, and before the police came to question Brahms, the house was already in flames, but only Mr. and Mrs. Hilscher made it out alive. Malcolm tries to convince her to leave, but Greta is certain that Brahms will not hurt him. The next day, Cole shows up in the house, surprised that Greta was hired to care for a doll. He tries to convince Greta to leave the next morning, but Malcolm walks in and leaves some minutes later, however, decides to stick around, fearing that Cole might attack Greta. Cole threatens Greta, and as a result, Brahms wants him out of the house. Cole gets extremely angry, smashing the doll on the floor and breaking it. Sudden mysterious voices occur within the walls of the house, and things start to move mysteriously. A masked guy emerges from the wall who turns out to be the real Brahms. He begins attacking Cole and Malcolm, killing Cole, and goes after Malcolm and Greta. While trying to escape, they discover a basement in which Brahms has been living and watching Greta all along. Greta finds the letter from the Hilschers stating they will not be coming back and Greta is his to keep. Brahms catches up with them, knocking Malcolm unconscious. Greta then decides to get Malcolm by taking control of Brahms, and Brahms starts following everything she says. Brahms later gets mad when Greta tries to kill him. Greta manages to save herself and Malcolm, then leave the Hilschers' mansion, leaving Brahms, who puts back the doll pieces together. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more.